This nation was
founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
It was founded on the principle.
That all men are created equal.
That all men are
created equal.
And that the rights of every man are diminished.
The rights of every man are diminished.
When the rights of one man are threatened.
As a familiar saying goes, it all starts at home. Concerning the subject of black women in the U.S., there is no exception to the rule. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2018, there were 11,322 single-parent families in the U.S., and 81.5% are headed by single mothers.
And considering the children of those single mothers, roughly 16.4 million children, are growing up without the father at the residence. So in many ways, single mothers must occupy the role of mother and father. And this sense of duality should not be overlooked. The sense of duality has been in effect since the days of slavery. Many female slaves were forced to serve as wet nurses at the demand of slave owners. This was indeed a difficult demand. Not only were these women forced to provide milk for the offspring of slavers and her own young, or in most cases disconnected from her own child or children altogether. And some forms of duality continued post-Emancipation Proclamation and into the workplace of today. Many black women have to occupy the seat of double minority for company business compliance, endure years of sexism in the workplace and general public, and represent the voice of all other black people in existence or ever existed. Due to these responsibilities and behavioral assumptions, some African American women have to embrace the notion of superwoman. From this perspective, I offer my appreciation for the Black Girls Rock and Black Girl Magic campaigns of the present day. Regardless of the balancing multiple tasks at home and the workplace, they still find a way to widely support community efforts. So to all the superwomen out there, keep being great. Matter of fact, CJ Ward Creations would not have experienced such success without the support and assistance of black women. However, I appreciate every supporter of CJWC regardless of gender or ethnicity.
From voting rights to the battle for equal rights, black women have experienced many pessimistic battles. Equal pay, the freedom to display the beauty of natural hair, being respected rather than objected, and sexual harassment are a few battles to name. With attention to these encounters and more, a constant sense of duality may have eventually transitioned into self-preservation.
This sense of self-preservation really conveys the difficult balance between living and operating as a double minority. Operating in the comfort of her femininity, and she may not be respected by her counterparts. Then, on the flip side of that coin, if she comes off too aggressive, she may experience seclusion from her colleagues or others in the standard workplace environment. Once again, the concept of duality can be read on the walls. For many women, their past can lead others through a multitude of old wounds. Parental absence, due to the parental separation, divorce, parental choice, imprisonment, circumstances, or death. Primary and/or secondary emotional trauma from molestation and cognitive effects associated, denial, acceptance, etc. Body image, personal insecurities, physical body maturing at an early or late age society deems as common. primary and secondary infidelity, personal relationships, parental or guardian association, trust issues and concerns, abandonment, betrayal, etc. And the list goes on.
Although the sense of duality can be shared by any woman of any ethnicity or background, there are some struggles unique to Black women. Here are just a few.
Body image. Current. Serena Williams and the French Open ban. In 2018, Serena Williams clutched a huge win at the French Open and secured a Grand Slam victory while wearing a black and red bodysuit. However, instead of Williams' triumph being met with admiration and esteem, she was handed criticism and ridicule by the French Tennis Federation president, who was quoted as stating, "I think that sometimes we've gone too far," and specifically mentioning Williams' suit as reference. Before going any further, how many other women's sports have bodysuits or leotards as uniforms? Gymnastics, athletics for track and field, volleyball, aquatics, swimming, diving, etc., CrossFit, cycling, bodybuilding, wrestling, bobsledding, and the list continues. However, according to Bernard and many other critics, Williams' bodysuit prompted a need for a dress code ban of certain outfits. It will no longer be accepted. One must respect the game and the place, Bernard said.
Serena Williams, please continue to be an influential individual as an athlete, fashion designer, woman, but most of all, as a human being. Congratulations on the Grand Slam victory after returning from childbirth. Respect.
Past. Sarah Bartman. Sarah Bartman was a South African, East Cape, and Cape Town woman who was scouted to be on display as an exhibition because of her large buttocks and genitals. As part of a freak show in Britain and other surrounding areas in the early 1800s under the name Hottentot Venus. If you are unfamiliar with the term Hottentot, look it up when possible. After being degraded and placed on many exhibits throughout the region of Britain, being sold as property, and dying as a slave to her circumstances at the age of 25, that was still not enough for some people, particularly Georges Cuvier. Cuvier decided to continue the degradation of Bartman by using her remains as an exhibit itself, unbelievably, for over 160 years. Bartman's remains remained on display until Nelson Mandela, during his presidency in South Africa, made a formal request to the French, ironically, for her remains to be returned to South Africa. For whatever reason, it took the French National Assembly 8 years to release her remains. And even then, the French government only returned a portion of the remains.
Sarah Bartman, it brought sorrow and discomfort to hear your story of exploitation, but it does not hold a candle to the sorrow and discomfort you experienced personally. I am glad your remains finally made their way to the Eastern Cape of South Africa. However, I am more appeased to know your story has been unearthed and is finally discussed. Your soul deserves it.
Hair. Current. Natural hair discrimination. In February 2019, New York City became the first city to institute a discrimination ban based on natural hair. And in April of 2019, California became the first state to issue a ban on discrimination of natural hairstyles. Natural hair, or natural hairstyles, meaning treated or untreated hairstyles such as locks or dreadlocks, cornrows, twists, braids, bantu knots, fades, afros, and or the right to keep hair in an uncut or untrimmed state. Pertaining to New York City, the guidelines obtained by the New York Times before their public release are based on the argument that hair is inherent to one's race and can be closely associated to racial, ethnic, or cultural identities, and therefore protected under the city's human rights laws, which outlaw discrimination on the basis of race, gender, national origin, religion, and other protected classes. To date, there is no legal precedent in federal court for the protection of hair. Indeed, last spring, the United States Supreme Court refused an NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund request to review a case in which a black woman, Chastity Jones, had her job offer rescinded in 2010 at an Alabama insurance company after she refused to cut off her dreadlocks. But New York City's Human Rights Commission is one of the most progressive in the nation. It recognizes many more areas of discrimination than federal law, including in employment, housing, pregnancy, and marital status. Its Legal Enforcement Bureau can conduct investigations and has the ability to subpoena witnesses and prosecute violations. There's nothing keeping us from calling out these policies prohibiting natural hair or hairstyles most closely associated to black people, said Carmen P. Malalis, the commissioner and chairman of the New York City Commission of Human Rights. They are based on racist standards of appearance, Ms. Malalis continued, saying that they perpetuate racist stereotypes that black hairstyles are unprofessional or improper. In New York, it isn't difficult to find black women and men who can speak about how their hair has affected their lives in both subtle and substantial ways, ranging from vowed comments from co-workers to ultimatums from bosses to look more professional or find another job. Stowe, 2019. And relating to the state of California, the bill would update the definition of race used in the existing law to be inclusive of traits historically associated with race, including, but not limited to, hair texture and protective hairstyles. In a society in which hair has historically been one of many determining factors of a person's race, and whether they were a second-class citizen, hair today remains a proxy for race, the bill says. Therefore, hair discrimination targeting hairstyles associated with race is racial discrimination. The measure, known as the Crown Act, an acronym for Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair, was introduced by the state senator Holly Mitchell of Los Angeles, a Democrat. Governor Newsom's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Friday. This is a fundamental issue of personal dignity and personal rights, Ms. Mitchell said in an interview on Friday. This bill has truly struck a deep personal chord with people because there is something so deeply personally offensive when you are told that your hair, in its natural state, is not acceptable in the workplace. Ms. Mitchell said the bill seeks to ban employers and schools from enforcing grooming policies that claim to be race neutral, but in reality have the disproportionate impact on people of color. She said she had been stopped on the street and had received letters from black people, many of them parents, who had shared stories of themselves or their children being singled out by bosses or by teachers because of the texture or style of their hair. I have heard from parents whose children has been sent home from school because they were told their hair was unruly, Ms. Mitchell said, or even more comically from my perspective, that their hair was a distraction to other children. Other children are distracted, so you have to leave. The bill points to the history of anti-black racism in the United States and the role it has played in shaping Eurocentric beauty standards and ideas of what constitutes a professional appearance. Professionalism was and still is closely linked to European features and mannerisms, which entails that those who do not naturally fall into the Eurocentric norms must alter their appearance, sometimes drastically and permanently, in order to be deemed as professional, the bill says. The bill also highlights what it calls a shortcoming of anti-discrimination law. Federal courts have ruled that the law protects African Americans when they are discriminated against for wearing their hair in afros, but not when they wear it in other natural hairstyles, or in braids, twists, or locks. A proposal to ban discrimination on the basis of hair in the workplace, housing, and public schools was introduced in the New Jersey legislature this week. That measure was in part a response to an episode last December when a black high school wrestler was forced to cut his dreadlocks ringside or else forfeit a match. In February, the New York City Commission on Human Rights issued new guidelines that ban discrimination on the basis of hair or hairstyle at work, at school, or in public accommodations. Ms. Mitchell, who has worn her hair in a natural style for 20 years, says she recently found a picture of herself and her mother at a 1982 high school graduation. In the photo, her hair was styled naturally. 30 years ago, when I was in high school in Riverside, a pretty conservative, predominantly white school, there was never a question as to whether or not my hair was appropriate, she said. Here we are years later, and black girls are being sent home for their hair being in violation of school dress code. I'm not sure how that happened, but now it hopefully won't anymore. Stack, 2019. Pass, code switching. By definition, code switching is the modifying of one's behavior, appearance, etc. to adapt to different sociocultural norms. And for decades, African American women have had to modify their behavior and appearance in order to integrate into corporate images, societal standards, and politically correct branding, etc. Basically, the assumption is the more closely an African American or black woman appears to resemble a white woman, the greater chance of integration. Mainstream, corporate, and/or company setting. These claims are validated by the fact the dominant culture in regards to institutional leverage of America are descendants of Europe or racially identified as white. In the event the validation of claims seems overboard, the truth of the matter is solidified based on the following observation. Fact that in 2019, discrimination bans on natural hair or hairstyles is a current topic of discussion speaks volumes and points out the oversized and humongous elephant in the room, nationally and internationally.
I would like to uplift the memory of Madam C.J. Walker and her efforts in entrepreneurism for empowering others and serving as a civil rights advocate. As a black man, raised around the influence of black women, creating and distributing healthcare products for yourself and many other minority women, thank you for your lasting influence.
Equality. Current. Justice for Sandra Bland. On July 10th, 2015, Sandra Bland, a 28-year-old native of Chicago, Illinois, was brutally arrested in Waller County, Texas, by Brian Encinia, a former state trooper in Texas, after being pulled over for a traffic violation. 3 days later, on July 13th, Sandra was found dead, hanging in her jail cell from a presumed suicide. Prior to the arrest, on that same day, Bland officially accepted a position at Prairie View A&M University. However, rather than being able to experience a full day of celebration and enjoyment for her new role at a university, it transitioned into her facing the numb feeling of confinement and loss of personal freedoms. Unfortunately, oftentimes, this is the fate of many African American women and girls, especially when considering 1 in 18 black women are likely to experience imprisonment versus the stats of a white woman, which is 1 in 111. Latino women, 1 in 45, and all women, 1 in 56 together. This is an institutional occurrence that has been going on for years, specifically in the institution of education. From an early age, many black women and girls are singled out for pretentious dress code violations, unequal behavioral complaints by biased staff members and vindictive teachers, higher amount of behavioral referrals resulting in greater suspension and in-school suspension rates, and the overall lack of advocacy for student success. However, when many of these young women press through and graduate, dress code violations turn into citations. Behavioral complaints become court records, behavioral referrals transition into arrests, and the lack of advocacy for student success transfers to slogans that suggest Black Lives Matter. To all those affected, please continue to stand strong and never give up. Regardless of the isolating feeling, just know this educator cares.
Dear Sandy, congratulations on taking the leap of faith to pursue a better life, attaining employment at your alma mater, and getting a few steps closer to experiencing emotional stability and financial security. It was a true misfortune to the society and world to lose such a talented and determined young mind. You could have very well been my wife, partner, sister, cousin, friend, classmate, or fellow trombonist in the same vein. So your loss I make personal. And from one brother to a fellow sister, your life mattered, and I will continue to keep your name alive. Sandra Annette Blaine.
Over the years, there has been an erroneous stereotype for black women and girls being diagnosed with the angry black woman syndrome, promoted through media, society, and bigotry. This popularized syndrome created another form of prejudice and prejudgment throughout the social fabric of this nation, stemming from years of being referred to as sassy or sapphire. The black women and many girls were viewed as dominant and aggressive, specifically during slavery and Jim Crow. This ideology can be viewed as a societal slap to the face for every courageous woman who ever fought for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness while living and surviving on the very soil of this Declaration of Independence. Now, in this century, black women and girls are ridiculed for being survivors and defying the social odds impressed upon them. From the classy First Lady, Mrs. Michelle Obama, being taunted on Facebook by a couple of West Virginians, to the asinine verbal jabs directed towards the elegant Serena Williams and her athletic physique. The struggle continues. However, I believe the sophisticated Miss Obama expressed the best way to combat these foolish slurs. Women, as Mrs. Obama stated, we endure those cuts in so many ways that we don't even notice we're cut, she said. We are living with small, tiny cuts, and we are bleeding every single day, and we're still getting up. At the end of the day, by staying true to the me I've always known, I found that this journey has been incredibly freeing, she added at her commencement address. Because no matter what happened, I've had the peace of mind of knowing that all of the chatter, the name calling, the doubting, all of it was just noise. It did not define me. First Lady Michelle Obama, Weiss, 2017.
Women have been my greatest supporters amongst any group of people, specifically African American and Black females, elderly and young alike. From serving as academic supports throughout my adolescent years, peer support throughout my undergraduate experiences, and advocates of my professional pursuits as an adult. I appreciate you all for making this man feel like his existence is important. In addition to the caring white women who offer genuine kindness and love, rather than the alternative, I'm truly grateful for your spirit of influence. Thank you for your caring spirit. It certainly makes a difference in this man's life. Matter of fact, to everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, or background, whoever offered an unbiased spirit instead of evil intent, you rock.